May 1945, Pacific Theater, Okinawa. The ground was still hot. Traces of enemy bombardment were everywhere. Ruined trenches, charred trees, piles of debris still smoldering. Colonel Stephan Mitchell, holding his steel helmet in his hands, remained indifferent to the distant cries of victory. While his men celebrated their triumph, he was simply tired. But this was not physical fatigue. It was a deep weariness carved into his soul by 12 years of military service and 5 years of war. Stephan was 42 years old. His temples had turned gray early, and the lines on his face told the story of more than his age. His journey from his small town in Maryland to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, and then to the bloodiest battlefields of the Pacific, had transformed him into a different man. At Guadalcanal, at Iwo Jima, at Saipan, with each battle he had become a little tougher, a little more withdrawn. But what still kept him going was his family back home. His wooden house in Baltimore, his wife Margaret growing tomatoes in the garden, his 10-year-old son Thomas and 7-year-old daughter Emily. He was fighting for them, for their freedom, for their future. Every time he looked at the photo in his pocket, he found a reason to endure one more day. Colonel Mitchell, one of the young lieutenants, Gary Henderson, came running up. His face was drunk with victory. "Sir, Berlin has fallen. The Germans have surrendered. The war in Europe is over." Stephan raised his head and looked at the lieutenant. The news was good, yes, but the war was not over yet. Japan was still resisting, and Stephan wasn't sure if he would be lucky enough to see the end of this war. "Good news, Lieutenant," he said in a flat voice, "but our work is not done yet. Tell the men 1 hour of celebration. Then back to camp order." "Aye, sir." Henderson saluted and walked away. Stephan walked slowly toward the command tent. The interior was simple and orderly: a field desk, a few maps, a camp cot, and a small chest containing his personal belongings. The American flag hanging on the wall swayed slightly in the dim light. He began organizing the papers piled on his desk. Missing persons reports, logistical requests, directives from higher command. All routine, all the cold bureaucratic face of war, until he saw that small white envelope. The envelope was different from the other official documents. It had a personal postmark. It was from Baltimore, but it wasn't Margaret's handwriting. It was an unfamiliar official typewritten address. His heart stopped for a moment. A strange uneasiness filled him. As a soldier who had served on the front lines for years, he knew how bad news arrived. And this envelope looked exactly like that kind of envelope. With trembling hands, he opened the envelope. The single-page official document inside bore the letterhead of the Baltimore Police Department. As his eyes scanned the lines, he couldn't grasp the meaning at first. Then he read it again, and once more. "It is with deep sorrow that we inform you that on April 3, 1945, as a result of an attack on your residence on Brookfield Avenue in Baltimore, your wife Margaret Ann Mitchell, 38, your son Thomas James Mitchell, 10, and your daughter Emily Rose Mitchell, 7, lost their lives." The words blurred. His hands began to shake. The paper fell to the floor. No, this couldn't be true. It must be a mistake. Margaret should be drinking her morning coffee. Thomas should be on his way to school. Emily should be playing in the garden. They were safe. America was safe. The war was across the ocean. The crime scene investigation indicates that the attack was a premeditated enemy sabotage operation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, has taken over the investigation. Enemy agents. He had thought the war was across the ocean. He had thought his family was safe. But the war had come to his home while he was fighting it. It had knocked on his door and taken his wife and children. His knees buckled. First he clung to the table, then he collapsed to the floor. The void in his chest was deeper than any enemy bullet could have made. He couldn't breathe. It was as if his lungs had turned to stone. The victory cries from outside the tent echoed in his ears. His men were celebrating their triumph. Some were singing, some were dancing. The war was over, at least in Europe. But for Stephan, the war had just ended. And he had lost. He brought his hands to his face. He hadn't cried in 12 years. He had lost hundreds of men on the battlefield. He had seen blood. He had seen death. But he had never cried. Because crying was a sign of weakness. Soldiers don't cry. Commanders don't cry. But now he was no commander. He was just a man who had lost his home, his family, his life. And silently, alone in the darkness of his tent, he cried. Hours passed. The celebrations outside gradually died down. Night fell. Someone came to his tent door wanting to enter, but retreated at Stephan's command. "I want to be alone." He sat on the ground, holding his wife's last letter in his hand. It was a letter from 3 weeks ago. Margaret talked about planting tomatoes in the garden. Thomas was doing well in math at school. He sat on the floor, holding his wife's last letter in his hand. It was a letter from 3 weeks ago. Margaret talked about planting tomatoes in the garden. Thomas winning the math competition at school. Emily learning to play the piano. An ordinary, beautiful, peaceful life, and now it was all gone. At the end of the letter, Margaret had written, "We miss you so much, Stephen. We pray for you every day. Please take care of yourself. When the war is over, we will make a new start together. I love you." A new start. But with whom would he make this new start? Stephen carefully folded the letter and put it in his breast pocket. Then he stood up, washed his face with cold water, and looked in the mirror. The man staring back at him was no longer the man he knew. His eyes were empty, his face pale, his spirit broken, but he still had a duty. He still had responsibilities. Hundreds of soldiers depended on him. He had to be strong for them. He straightened his uniform, put on his helmet, and left the tent. Outside, the camp had fallen silent. The sentries were on patrol, the others were sleeping. Stephan walked to the edge of the camp, to the rocks where the ocean could be seen. The moonlight painted the sea silver. The waves beat rhythmically against the shore. In the distance, the silhouette of another island appeared on the horizon. Stephan stopped at the edge of the rocks and looked out at the ocean. The sea was always here. Whether the war ended or not, whether people lived or died, the sea would always be here. Impartial, infinite, unchanging. Perhaps that was why it gave him peace. For the first time, he wondered, what would he do after the war ended? He couldn't go home. That house in Baltimore was no longer a home. It was a tomb. He could return to Annapolis, to the army. But did he want to serve another 30 years, witnessing more wars, more deaths? No, he had fought enough. He had lost enough. He looked out at the sea. Perhaps the answer was there. In the sea, in the waves, in the endless blue. That night, Stephan Mitchell planted the first seeds of how he would live the rest of his life. He didn't know it yet, but those quiet hours spent on the edge of that rock would be the beginning of his rebirth. But first, he had to experience the pain. He had to accept the loss, and this would be a long, difficult journey. June 1945, Okinawa base. For the past month, Stephan Mitchell had been like a ghost. Physically, he was there, giving orders, attending meetings, signing reports, but his spirit was elsewhere. In that wooden house in Baltimore, in the kitchen where Margaret made coffee, at the table where Thomas did his homework, in the living room where Emily played with her toys, his sergeants had noticed the change. Colonel Mitchell had always been a tough and disciplined commander, but in recent weeks there was a different kind of toughness about him. Cold, distant, almost robotic. The light in his eyes had gone out. His smile was gone. He walked like a shell, hollow inside but solid on the outside. "Colonel," said Captain Robert Chen, Stephan's closest aide. Chen was a Chinese-American who had fought alongside Stephan since the beginning of the war. "We've received an order from headquarters. Rotation begins in mid-July. You're in the first group." Stephan continued to stare at the map. "I understand." "You're going home, sir," said Chen, a cautious hope in his voice. "Finally, after 2 years, home." Stephan's voice was harsh. "Which home, Captain?" Chen fell silent. He knew, everyone knew. The news had spread through official channels. Colonel Mitchell's family had been killed in enemy sabotage. This information was whispered in every corner of the camp. The men spoke more carefully around Stephan, complained less, because their losses paled in comparison to the loss of their commander. "I'm sorry, Colonel," Chen said softly. Begin preparations," Stephan said, cutting him off. "Bring me the list of personnel going on rotation. I want it by evening." "Yes, sir." Chen saluted and left. Stephan was alone. The interior of the command tent was stifling in the afternoon heat. But he didn't feel it. He felt nothing anymore. Even the pain had dulled. The raw, sharp pain of the early days had given way to a dull, permanent emptiness. He opened the drawer of his desk. Margaret's photo was inside. He had last seen her 5 years ago. Since then, only letters, only photos. And now even those were gone. The last letter had arrived 3 weeks ago. Silence since then. Now he knew why. He had also read the FBI report. It was a detailed, cold corporate document. It described how the attack had been carried out and who the perpetrators were. A cell affiliated with the German Abwehr had targeted the families of American officers. Stephan's family had been one of the targets. The perpetrators had been caught and convicted, but what good was this information? His family would not come back. Justice was now an empty concept. The tent flap opened again. This time it was Colonel William Harrison, the regional commander, Stephan's direct superior, a man in his 60s, experienced, who had seen all the cruelty of war. "Mitchell," he said, in an informal tone. "Got a minute?" "Of course, sir." Stephan stood up and saluted. Harrison gestured with his hand as if to say there was no need for a salute. "Sit down. This isn't official." They both sat down. Harrison looked into Stephan's eyes. "How are you, son?" Stephan answered without hesitation. "I'm fine, sir." "Don't lie to me," said Harrison, his voice firm but compassionate. "I've known you for 20 years. I know you're not fine." Stephan lowered his head. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth," Harrison said. "You're human, Stephan. It's normal to have feelings. It's normal to be broken. If I were you, I'd probably reach for my gun." "I can't do that," Stephan said. "There are responsibilities. There are men. The war isn't over yet." "The war is over for you," Harrison said firmly. "You're rotating out. You'll be in San Diego in a month. From there, you can go anywhere you want." "And what will I do?" Stephan's voice cracked for the first time. "Where will I go? Who will I live with?" "It's all over, Captain. Everything is over." Harrison took a deep breath. "I know you feel that way. And right now, nothing will comfort you. But Stephan, you're a strong man. You know how to survive. At Guadalcanal, at Iwo Jima, here, you've always survived. Because you have the will to live inside you." "Not anymore," Stephan said quietly. "I was living for them. I was fighting for them. What am I living for now?" Harrison stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the ocean. "I lost my wife in the war," he said unexpectedly. "In 1942. It was a car accident. I was in the Pacific and she died in Washington. She couldn't say goodbye to me, and I couldn't say goodbye to her. For years I blamed myself. I thought if only I had been there, maybe I could have saved her." Stephan looked at Harrison in astonishment. They had worked together for years, but he had never heard this before. Harrison continued. "But then I realized that life goes on. Whether I suffer or not, the world keeps turning, and I had to make a choice. Either I would live with this pain, or I would run away from it. I chose to live." "How?" asked Stephan. "How were you able to do that?" Harrison continued. "But then I realized that life goes on. Whether I suffer or not, the world keeps turning, and I had to make a choice. Either I would live with this pain, or I would run away from it. I chose to live." "How?" asked Stephan. "How did you manage it?" "One day at a time," said Harrison. "You wake up in the morning, wash your face, put on your uniform. You do your job, you survive until the next day, and after a while you realize you're living. The pain is still there, but it's no longer suffocating you." Stephan couldn't fully digest Harrison's words, because at that moment the pain was suffocating him. He couldn't breathe. Every morning when he woke up, for a moment he thought everything was normal. Then reality reminded him. And in that moment, something inside him broke every time. "I'll give you some advice," said Harrison, sitting down across from Stephan. "Don't go home. Don't go to Baltimore. Only memories await you there. Go somewhere else. To the beach, to the mountains, somewhere. Be alone with yourself. Be alone. Mourn. Cry. Scream. Do whatever you want to do. But then decide, will you live or will you die?" "I'm already dead," said Stephan. "No," Harrison said firmly. "You're not dead. You're wounded. You're broken. You're shattered. But you're still breathing. I'm still here talking to you. That means you're still alive. And as long as you're alive, you have a chance." "A chance at what?" Stephan asked, his voice weary. "To live again," said Harrison. "Maybe not with your family. Maybe not the way you planned. But in another way. You'll find your own path, Stephan." "I know it." Harrison stood up and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned. "You're leaving here in a month. Until then, think. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? When you find the answers, go and do it." The door closed. Stephan was alone. Harrison's words echoed in his head. Where do you want to go? He didn't want to go back to Baltimore, or Annapolis, or military life. He didn't want to go anywhere, but Harrison was right. He was still alive. Even if he didn't want to be, he was breathing. His heart was beating, his body was working, and maybe, Maybe there was a chance, like Harrison said. A small, distant, almost impossible chance. But still a chance. That night, Stephan went back to the rocks. He looked at the ocean. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, as always. The moonlight made the water glisten like silver, and for the first time, an idea began to form. It wasn't clear yet. It was vague, blurry, hard to grasp. But it was there. Maybe the answer lay in the sea. Maybe to start over, he needed to return to the sea. Fishing, buying a boat, being alone in the middle of the ocean. This idea gave him a strange sense of peace. He hadn't made a decision yet. But for the first time, he could imagine a future. A dark, vague, uncertain future, but still a future. And maybe that was enough. For now. July 1945, San Diego Naval Base. The ship slowly docked at the port. Thousands of soldiers gathered on deck, excited to return home. Some were crying, some were singing, some were silently searching for their families in the crowd. Hundreds of people waiting on the pier waved flags and held signs. "Welcome home, my hero." "I love you, son." "Daddy, finally." Stephan stood in a quiet corner of the deck watching this scene. There was a strange emptiness inside him. Not happiness, not jealousy, just emptiness. Those soldiers had families to reunite with. "He didn't, Colonel," said Captain Chen, approaching him. "The disembarkation procedure has begun. Officers will disembark first." "You go, Chen," said Stephan. "I'm in no hurry." Chen hesitated. "Your family. Besides, won't anyone be there to meet you?" Stephan looked at him. There was genuine concern in Chen's eyes. "No," he said simply. "No one." "Then I'll wait," said Chen. "I'll be here until you disembark." "There's no need," said Stephan, but his voice softened. "Your family is anxiously waiting." "They can wait another hour," said Chen resolutely. "You are my commander. I won't leave you alone." Stephan shot Chen a grateful look. They had fought side by side for 2 years. Chen wasn't a soldier who blindly obeyed his orders. He was a thinking, feeling, human friend. "Thank you, Chen," said Stephan. "But really, go. Your wife and children are waiting for you. Don't keep them waiting any longer." Chen touched Stephan's shoulder lightly, a rare gesture of closeness between soldiers. "If you need anything, Captain, you know my address?" "I'm in San Francisco." "I know," said Stephan. "Go now." Chen saluted, looked back one last time, and walked away from the deck. Stephan was left alone. The shouts of the soldiers, the cries of the families, the marches played by the orchestra. It all came from afar, as if from another world. Finally, he too disembarked. Walking along the pier, he witnessed the reunions around him. One soldier lifted his little girl into the air and spun her around. Another was crying, hugging his elderly mother. A young lieutenant was sharing a long kiss with his girlfriend. Stephan bowed his head and continued walking. When he entered the base's administrative office, an officer greeted him. "Colonel Mitchell, welcome back. Your discharge papers are ready. You just need to sign a few documents. Discharge. The end of a 30-year military career." He had once dreamed of retiring, buying a small house on the beach with Margaret, and living a peaceful life. Watching Thomas go to college, being there for Emily's wedding, seeing grandchildren. Now it was all a dream. He signed the papers. His name, his rank, his service number. All of it was left behind with a pen and a signature. He was no longer Colonel Mitchell. He was just Stephan Mitchell, a nameless, rootless, floating name. "Where would you like to go, sir?" asked the officer. "We can arrange transportation." "I don't know," Stephan said honestly. The officer was surprised. "Your family. I mean, your relatives. Where are they?" "None," said Stephan. The word came out cold and sharp from his lips. The officer glanced quickly at the file. His face changed. He understood. "I see," he said in a softer tone. "I'm sorry. Well, if you need somewhere to go, there are hotels, shelters, or temporary housing on campus." "No need," said Stephan. "I'll manage." When he stepped outside, the sun was high in the sky. San Diego's warm air mingled with the salty scent of the Pacific. The streets were filled with soldiers returning home and families welcoming them. Stephan walked through the crowd, but he wasn't part of it. He was a ghost, invisible, untouchable. He walked for hours. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't care. Streets, parks, bridges, they all blended together. Finally, he found himself at the pier. Fishing boats, merchant ships, yachts, all swayed gently on the waves. He sat down on a bench and looked out at the ocean. The horizon was infinite and still. The waves crashed onto the shore in a steady rhythm. Seagulls screeched, circling overhead. He realized for the first time, the sea was telling him something. Not with words, but with a language. The language of silence. The rhythm of the waves, the whisper of the wind, the murmur of the water. They all carried a message. Come, there is peace here. There is silence here. You can be alone here. And Stephan made his decision in that moment. He would become a fisherman. He would buy a boat, set sail on the ocean, and spend his days at sea. Far from people, far from memories, far from pain. Just the sea, the sky, and himself. The next day, he went to a small fishing village. Monterey, south of San Francisco, was a quiet and peaceful place. He spoke with an old fisherman on the pier. Are you looking for a boat? Asked the old man, his face sunburned. His name was Giuseppe, an Italian immigrant fisherman. Yes, said Stephan. A small boat. For fishing. Giuseppe looked Stephan up and down. Were you a soldier? Yes, said Stephan. Marine? I see, said Giuseppe, nodding. You're coming back from the war, looking for peace. Sort of, said Stephan. Giuseppe smiled. The sea gives peace, but it also takes it away. You have to be ready. I am ready, said Stephan. Giuseppe led him to the end of the pier. There was an old wooden boat there. Its paint was peeling, its sail patched, but it was sturdy. This is my old boat, said Giuseppe. I don't use it anymore. I'm old, retired. If you want, I can sell it to you. Cheap. Stephan looked at the boat. It wasn't perfect, but it suited him. Just like himself, worn, scarred, but still standing. How much? He asked. Giuseppe named a price. It was reasonable. Stephan took out part of his discharge pay and paid him. Congratulations, said Giuseppe, shaking his hand. You're a fisherman now. Thank you, said Stephan. A word of advice, said Giuseppe, becoming serious. The sea confronts you with your loneliness. If you're running away from yourself, the sea will find you. Be prepared, Stephan nodded. He wasn't running away. He was just moving away. From people, from life, from everything. That day, he launched his boat for the first time. The engine started, the wheel turned, the sail unfurled. The boat slowly left the harbor. Stephan stood at the helm and moved forward. The shore was left behind. Buildings, people, sounds, everything receded. Only the sea, the sky, and himself remained. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something. Lightness. It was as if the weight on his shoulders had lessened a little. The pain was still there, but it no longer suffocated him. He could breathe. He stayed on the boat until sunset. He didn't fish, he didn't do anything. He just sat and watched. The waves, the clouds, the horizon. And he listened to the silence. The silence was telling him something. He didn't quite understand yet, but he felt it. Maybe this was how healing began. With silence, with solitude, with the sea. When the sun set, he returned to the harbor. Giuseppe was waiting on the pier. How was it? He asked. It was good, said Stephan. And for the first time, he wasn't lying. August 1945, Monterey coast. The first week, Stephan just went out to sea and came back. He didn't fish, he didn't talk to anyone, he didn't do anything. He just sat there, watched the waves, and listened to the silence. Giuseppe met him at the pier every evening. Did you catch any fish today? He would ask. No, Stephan would say. Maybe tomorrow, Giuseppe would say, smiling. The second week, Stephan cast his net for the first time, but he did it clumsily. The net got tangled and broke. He struggled for hours, repairing it. His hands were bleeding, his arms were sore, but he didn't complain. The pain made him feel alive. It reminded him that he was still alive. The third week, he caught his first fish. It was a small sea bass, not very valuable. But as Stephan held it in his hands, he felt a strange feeling. Success. Small, insignificant, but real success. When Giuseppe saw the fish, he applauded. Bravo, your first fish. This is special. You should eat this fish. You should cook it yourself. That night, Stephan cooked the fish over a wood fire in Giuseppe's cabin. It was a simple meal, just fish, salt, and lemon. But the taste was wonderful. Maybe it was the effort of his own hands, maybe it was hunger, maybe it was just that he hadn't really tasted anything in a long time. How is it? Asked Giuseppe, sitting opposite him. Good, said Stephan. Very good. Giuseppe poured wine into 2 glasses. A toast to your first fish. They drank. The wine was cheap, but it was warm. "Tell me," said Giuseppe. "Why are you here? Why did you come to the sea?" Stephan looked at his glass. There was a long silence. Then he spoke. "My family died, in the war, by enemy agents." Giuseppe's face darkened. "Dio mio, I'm so sorry." "Me too," said Stephan. "I fought for them. I went across the ocean to protect them. But I couldn't protect them. They should have been safe at home, but they weren't." "It's not your fault," said Giuseppe softly. "I know," said Stephan. "But that doesn't ease the pain." Giuseppe shook his head. "Pain teaches you something. It takes time, but it teaches you." "What does it teach?" asked Stephan. "How to live," said Giuseppe. "How to truly live. Because everything, every moment is temporary. We're here today, we may not be here tomorrow. That's why we need to know the value of every moment." Stephan listened to these words silently. In the war, he had faced death every moment. But back then, he had a future. He had been waiting for the day he would see Margaret, Thomas, Emily. Now there was no future. Only today existed. "Well, you?" said Stephan. "Why are you here? Why do you live alone?" Giuseppe smiled sadly. "I lost my wife too, years ago. Tuberculosis. There was no cure back then. I just watched her slowly slip away. We never had children. Her family was in Italy. I was left alone." "I'm sorry," said Stephan. "That's life," said Giuseppe. "It gives us pain, but it also gives us beauty. The sea gave me peace. The fish gave me purpose. Going out to sea every day gave me a reason to live. Maybe it will give you one too." That night, Stephan slept in the cabin, on Giuseppe's old mattress, under the blankets. For the first time, he slept without nightmares. In his dream, there was the sea. There were waves, but there was no fear. Only peace. As the days passed, Stephan began to become one with the sea. Every morning he woke at dawn, set out to sea in his boat, and stayed until sunset. He learned to fish, he learned to mend nets, he learned to predict the weather. Giuseppe taught him everything. "The sea is like a book," he said one day. "If you learn to read it, it will tell you everything. The shape of the waves, the direction of the wind, the color of the clouds. They all carry a message." Stephan listened carefully. He had learned strategy in war, tactics, leadership, but he had never learned to read the sea. Now he was learning something new every day. In September, he experienced his first storm. The morning had started calmly, but by afternoon the sky darkened. The wind picked up, the waves grew. Stephan tried to return to port, but it was too late. The storm rocked his boat. Waves washed over the deck. The engine stopped. The rudder jammed. Stephan was alone in the middle of the waves. For the first time, he felt real fear. He hadn't been this scared even in battle. Because in battle, he had a weapon, he had a plan, he had a chance. But here, against nature, he had no chance. The waves tossed him, the wind pushed him, the rain blinded him. Hours passed. Darkness fell. Stephan stood at the helm, trying with all his might to control the boat. And in those moments, something strange happened. His pain seemed small compared to his fear. The absence of Margaret, Thomas, and Emily faded beside the fury of the storm. Because at that moment, his only thought was to survive. He focused only on the next wave, the next gust of wind, the next moment. And he realized that this was what it meant to live. To live each moment, to forget the past, to not think about the future. Only now, only here. The storm died down towards morning. Stephan returned to the harbor. The boat was damaged, the sail torn, the engine broken. But he was alive. Giuseppe was waiting on the pier, anxious. "My God, you scared me. I thought the sea had taken you." "It didn't," said Stephan, staggering with exhaustion. "But it tried." Giuseppe laughed, relieved. "Good. That means the sea accepted you. Because the sea only tests the strong." Stephan looked at the boat. It needed repairing. It would take time, money, effort. But he would do it, because this boat was no longer just a boat. It was his life, his new beginning. In October, he went down to the village for the first time. It was a small village, home to a few hundred people. Fishermen, shopkeepers, retirees. Everyone knew each other. Stephan entered a hardware store. He was going to buy supplies for the boat. An elderly woman stood behind the counter. "How can I help you?" she asked, smiling. "Wood, nails, paint. For boat repairs," said Stephan. The woman gathered the supplies. "Are you new here? I haven't seen you before." "Yes," said Stephan. "I arrived 2 months ago." "Welcome then," said the woman. "I'm Martha. Everyone knows everyone in this town. It won't be long before we know you too." Stephan nodded. He didn't want to talk, but the woman was persistent. "Are you a fisherman?" she asked. "Yes," said Stephan briefly. "Great. There are good fishermen here. Do you know Giuseppe? He's legendary around here." "Yes, I know him," said Stephan. "I bought my boat from him." "Ah, then you're family now," said Martha cheerfully. "Giuseppe helps everyone. He's a good man." Stephan paid, took his supplies, and left. But as he left town, he felt a strange feeling. These people hadn't treated him like a stranger. They hadn't asked questions, hadn't mentioned his pain. They had just welcomed him in a normal, sincere way. Maybe that was good. Maybe this was the right place for a new beginning. It took 3 weeks to repair the boat. Every day he worked at the dock. He cut wood, hammered nails, painted. His hands became calloused, his arms grew stronger, his mind calmed, and every evening he ate with Giuseppe. They talked, drank wine, told stories. Giuseppe talked about Italy, his youth, his adventures at sea. Stephan rarely spoke, but he listened, and listening did him good. In November, the boat was ready. Its new paint gleamed, its sails were stitched, its engine ran. Giuseppe inspected the boat and nodded his approval. "Perfect," he said. "Now it's a real fishing boat." "You need to give it a name," Stephan thought. A name. His boat needed a name. But what? That night, he sat under the stars and thought. Margaret, Thomas, Emily. Their names were too heavy. He couldn't carry them. But he didn't want to forget them either. Then it came to him. Harrison's words, "As long as you live, you have a chance." Giuseppe's words, "The sea brings peace." And the voice inside him, "Maybe I can start over." "Second chance," he said to Giuseppe the next day. "The boat's name will be Second Chance." Giuseppe's eyes lit up. He nodded, smiled. "Perfetto, perfect name, because the sea gives everyone a second chance, and you deserve that chance." Stephan responded with a slight smile for the first time. Maybe Giuseppe was right. Maybe this really was a second chance. His old life wouldn't come back, but he could build a new one. Different, but meaningful. And so the second chance set sail. Stephan at the helm, looking out to the horizon. The past was behind him. The future was unknown. But now, here, at sea, there was hope, and that was enough. December 1945, Monterey winter arrived. The sea grew rough, the waves grew larger, the air grew colder. Most fishermen pulled their boats ashore, deciding to spend the winter at home. But Stephan continued. Every morning, he set out to sea with the second chance and returned to port in the evening. He wasn't just fishing anymore. He was reading the sea, feeling it, understanding it. Every wave was a rhythm. Every wind was a message. Every day he was getting a little better. One day Giuseppe asked, "What are you doing for Christmas?" Stephan hesitated. Christmas. It used to be his favorite time of year. Margaret would bake apple pie, Thomas would decorate the tree, Emily would sing songs. Now Christmas was just a painful memory. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Nothing, I guess." "Nonsense," said Giuseppe firmly. "You won't be alone. We'll have dinner at my cabin. Martha will come, and a few friends. A little family gathering. I don't know," said Stephan. Being around people talking, laughing. Was he ready for that? "Yes, you know," said Giuseppe. "You're coming." No discussion. And on Christmas Eve, Stephan found himself at Giuseppe's cabin. It was a small, warm place that smelled of wood. Firewood was burning in the fireplace. Food was laid out on the table. Martha was there along with an elderly fisherman couple, Antonio and Rosa. At first, it felt strange to Stephan. He didn't really know these people. But as the evening progressed, he relaxed. They talked, laughed, ate. None of them asked about Stephan's past. probed his pain. They just lived in the moment together, and Stephan realized for the first time, being among people did him good. Loneliness was fine for a while, but you couldn't stay alone forever. Humans were social beings. They needed connections. At midnight, after everyone had left, Giuseppe and Stephan sat by the fire. "Thank you," said Stephan. "Tonight was something I didn't know I needed." "I knew," said Giuseppe, smiling, "because I've been there too. Pain closes you off inside, but after a while you have to come out. Otherwise you get lost." "I still miss them," said Stephan, his voice fragile for the first time. "Every day, every moment, it's like there's a void inside me. Nothing can fill it." "Don't try to fill it," said Giuseppe. "That void is their place. It will always be there. But over time you can build new things around that void. New memories, new bonds, new meanings. They won't fill the void, but they will teach you to live with it." Stephan looked at the fire. The flames danced, the wood crackled. Giuseppe's words were true. The pain would never go away. But perhaps he could learn to live with the pain. Perhaps he could find beauty even within the pain. New Year's Day arrived. 1946, a new year, a new beginning. Stephan welcomed the new year on the boat, at sea, under the stars, alone, but no longer feeling lonely. Because there was the sea, there was the sky, and within him, however small, there was hope. In January, he received a letter. It was from the military mail service. When he opened it, he saw it was from Captain Chen. "Dear Colonel, I hope this letter reaches you. After San Diego, I haven't heard from you. I was worried. But a friend said he saw you in Monterey. He said you were fishing. Are you happy? I hope you are. You are a man who deserves peace. I am in San Francisco. The family is well. The children are growing up. My wife is happy. But we miss you. If you ever come this way, our door is always open to you. Sincerely, Robert Chen." Stephan read the letter over and over. Chen was a good man. They had fought side by side in the war. And now, in peace, he still thought about him. Maybe one day he could visit Chen. He could meet his family. They could reminisce about old times. But not yet. He wasn't ready yet. In February, there was an event in town. The local fishermen were celebrating the best catch of the year. Giuseppe took Stephan along. "Come meet the people," he said. "You're part of this town now." Stephan hesitated. But then he agreed, because Giuseppe was right. He was part of this town now, like it or not. At the event, there were dozens of fishermen, old people, young people, families. Everyone was displaying their fish, telling their stories. Stephan watched quietly. Then a young man came up to him. He was about 20 years old, bearded, with a smiling face. "Are you Stephan Mitchell?" he asked. "Yes," said Stephan. "I'm Daniel," said the young man. "Giuseppe mentioned you. He said you came back from the war and learned fishing. I was a soldier too, on the European front. I came back last year." Stephan looked at Daniel. There was something familiar in his eyes, having lived, having seen death, having lost. "How's it going?" Stephan asked. "Not bad," Daniel said. "It's hard sometimes. The nights especially, nightmares, memories. But the days are easier, fishing, being at sea. It helps." Stephan nodded. He understood, because he was experiencing the same thing. "Giuseppe is a good teacher," said Daniel. "Does he teach you too?" "Yes," said Stephan. "Everything." The two talked for a while. Not about the war, but about fish, the sea, boats, ordinary everyday things. And Stephan realized that this conversation was good for him, because Daniel understood him too. They had both been down the same road. In March, spring arrived. The sea warmed up, the fish multiplied, the days grew longer. Stephan was now selling fish regularly. The money he earned was enough to live on. It wasn't much, but it was enough. One day Giuseppe asked, "Are you happy, Stephan?" Stephan thought about it. Was he happy? Not in the old sense. His old happiness, the happiness he had with Margaret, Thomas, and Emily, would never return. But there was a different kind of happiness now. A quiet, deep, peaceful happiness, a happiness given by the sea, taught by solitude. "Yes," he said finally. "I think I am," Giuseppe smiled. "I'm glad to hear that, because now you've really started to live." May 1946. It had been a full year since he received the news. A full year without Margaret, without Thomas, without Emily. Stephan got up early that morning. He boarded the Second Chance and set sail. He went far out toward the horizon. Hours later he stopped. He turned off the engine. He remained in silence. Then he took an envelope out of his pocket. Inside were 3 letters. Margaret's last letter, a drawing by Thomas, a poem written by Emily. He read them all carefully, one last time, then he stood up. He kissed each letter, pressed them to his chest. "I love you," he said aloud. "I always will. But now I have to live, not for you, but for myself, because life goes on, and I want to give this life another chance." He threw the letters into the sea. The papers floated on the waves, slowly drifting away. Stephan watched them, tears in his eyes. But this time the tears weren't just pain. They were goodbye. They were letting go. They were accepting to move forward. The waves took the letters, carried them away, carried them to the depths of the ocean. And there, on the deck of the Second Chance, Stephan felt it for the first time. He was free. The weight of the past was no longer on his shoulders. There was no more guilt in his heart. Only memories remained, beautiful, painful, precious memories. And these memories no longer destroyed him. Instead, they strengthened him. When he returned to port, Giuseppe was waiting for him. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Ready for what?" asked Stephan. "To live," said Giuseppe, smiling. Stephan looked at him. Then, perhaps for the first time in a year, he truly smiled. "Yes," he said. "I'm ready." And that day, Stephan Mitchell was reborn. He was no longer the old Stephan. He was no longer a colonel, no longer a husband, no longer a father. He was just Stephan, a fisherman, a survivor, a newcomer, and Second Chance sailed into the endless ocean that awaited him. The waves rolled rhythmically. The sun shone on the horizon, and Stephan at the helm looked to the future, because the future was no longer frightening. It was hopeful, and that was enough. If you are curious about Stephan's inspiring life story, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the stories we will share every day.